At this time, I'd like to call the Monday, March 12th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting to order. That brings us to the first item on the agenda, which is roll call. Althoff. Here. Charnel. Daniels.
Here.
Hema.
Here.
Lindell.
Here.
And Pidd here. That brings us to number 3 here, which would be the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
We got a motion by Mr. Althoff and a second by Mr. Hema. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to number 4, which is the approval of the minutes from the February 12th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve, yeah.
I've got a motion by Mr. Lindell and a second by
Hema.
Mr. Hema. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to number 5, which is public input. Citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. Please approach the microphone and before speaking, give your name and address for the record. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone here for something that's not on the agenda? All right, that brings us to number 6, which is the public hearing for the zoning text amendment. And at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing.
I will just give a brief overview for the viewers at home and for our commissioners here. Tonight we are discussing the Cannon River Winery proposed zoning ordinance text amendment. A brief background is the Cannon River Winery has reached an agreement with the city of Cannon Falls where the city will be taking responsibility for all land use applications for the proposed winery expansion. In order to expand the winery, the B1, which is the Central Business District, needs to be amended to allow a production winery. We are defining production winery as any location where wine is produced or manufactured and then sold to other locations. The Cannon River Winery is currently in the process of acquiring 2 parcels of land from the city and the Cannon Falls EDA, and other items are forthcoming in this project. Tonight we are just looking at amending the B1 Central Business District. So, for a little refresher, the Planning Commission needs to decide whether a production winery should be a permitted use or a conditional use. A permitted use is defined in our ordinance, and it is an allowed use within a district without the need for any special permitting or review by the Planning Commission or Council. There are general standards in the city code, and any business that would like to open under a permitted use will be allowed as long as they follow the rules in the city code. A conditional use is allowed within the district, but the city needs a reasonable degree of discretion. Therefore, the applicants must come before the Planning Commission and the City Council and be approved for a conditional use. So, to review, an ordinance allowing a production winery as a permitted use in the B1 Central Business District of the City of Cannon Falls would allow the winery to move forward without a conditional use permit application or further review from the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit requirement would require the winery go through the conditional use permit process, which we would bring back to the Planning Commission in April, with conditions as brought up by the Planning Commission and City Council when they review this next week. The Planning Commission needs to make a recommendation to the City Council where the City Council will make the final decision on whether to permit a production winery as a conditional use or permitted use. So tonight, I'm just going to open it to our commissioners, and they will discuss amongst themselves and with any members of the public wishing to speak on whether the production winery should be a conditional use or a permitted use.
Well, does anybody have any thoughts?
I would be in favor of a conditional use, a permit use, basically if they meet permits, they can do whatever they want there, and but I think we just need to kind of know everything they're gonna do.
So then you would be more in favor of the conditional use permit as opposed to a permitted use? Because a permitted use, that would mean that anyone in that zone would be able to make wine then, is that right? And sell it?
That is correct. If anybody else wanted to come in and have a production winery in a vacant building downtown, that would be allowed.
Precedent set.
Yeah. In fewer words, yes, a precedence would be set for the rest of the central business district, yes.
So I would be in favor of a conditional use permit, or do we need a motion? Or does anybody else have any?
I'm in favor of a conditional use that gives us a little bit more say as to what can happen, rather than open the door to carte blanche.
Yeah.
This is kind of major for the downtown area. It's an industrial site in historic downtown Cannon Falls. So, you know, there's things that need to be talked and discussed and explained to us as far as, I mean, number one, what's parking? What's going to happen to parking now? Because they use up every square inch, and if there's a building there, and now we have the beer business finally up and running, which is nice. We have a limited amount of parking. Also would like to see where the water runoff plan is. There's a lot of hard surface. Where's the water going to go? That's a couple of them. The presentation of utilities would be nice. There's, you know, a lot of little things that need to be looked into. This is a major step for downtown Cannon Falls. I'd be in favor of the conditional use.
I feel the same way. I think it has to be a conditional use and I've got concerns. Well, you're mentioning the traffic. Well, we saw what happened when the brewery opened last weekend. There was no place to park downtown. So that's an issue that's got to be addressed. Also, I have an issue with the warehouse adjacent to this property. I mean, I have semis unloading. It's my warehouse, but just to get an overall picture of it, I really think that, you know, we got to, where the trucks are unloading, that's all got to be gone through too, but that can be done later. But I think a conditional use permit is the way to go.
Agreed. Absolutely. I'm surprised about I know that the street side looks, you know, fine, looks interesting, but in the west elevation picture is just, I don't know, it looks pretty warehousey, you know. It's definitely it's definitely going to be very visual as people come into town, and I'm not sure that that warehouse look is what I want to see.
What you're saying, it doesn't fit into the historical building background?
Well, I'm not. It just is a block building, you know. I mean, it looks like a block building when you drive in, and if you drive in on 19 and look across to the site, it just looks like an industrial complex. I like the north elevation, looks nice, but the west elevation and south elevation look pretty blocky. It's got no.
Sam, could you answer a quick question maybe?
Yeah.
Does the city still employ engineering firm
Yes, we do.
Have they got any of this information or any of this brought their way as to how through their eyes, this would react with the city?
So I believe that our city engineer that we work with mostly is Greg Anderson with SEH. He has been given all of this information. As we move further along with the project, he will be getting all the information regarding the runoff and things like that. At this point, the winery doesn't have full 100% plans ready with their grading and things like that. They're kind of waiting for us as the city to tell them whether they will need to keep going through this process. And they're also working on things like the tax abatement and everything with the council. So they're still looking at kind of a long process. So they're not 100% ready with their plans. But if them having at least a rough grading plan that is looked at and you have comments from our city engineer is something you want to add to a conditional use permit for this, that's something that we can definitely talk about.
I think it would be the professional way of doing this.
Yeah.
Have somebody with some experience and knowledge be able to point out to us as board members as well as the community.
Yeah, it just looks like a manufacturing building in a downtown. It looks like something you'd put in an industrial park. It's that simple. I mean, yeah, on the street, on Mill Street, they've added some decor, but the rest of it looks like an industrial building that you'd see in an industrial park. It's interesting, but not very attractive, not very appealing. I like the fact that we're doing something with downtown that'll bring people in. I understand that we need to do that, and I'm all for any positive development, but I mean, this looks like an industrial building. That's all it is. It's not a building that you'd see in a downtown situation usually.
Well, I think most of the parking is gonna be in the city parking lot.
Yeah, the city
It doesn't
parking,
look like
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there is one entrance there and that,
I don't even know if there's an entrance on south elevation. Not a public entrance.
No, it doesn't look like a public entrance, I don't believe. I think it's, looks like the north elevations where the entrance is.
So, got to figure out how to get around to that, to the front of the building, or to the Mill Street side of the building. If you park in back of it, how are you going to get around?
It won't be on John and my property. There's a gate going up there.
Yeah, I understand. Makes sense.
so then basically we just need to make a motion that
Yep.
they will, be under the guidelines of a conditional use permit.
Yes, and we need to kind of have a discussion on what conditions the commission would like to see imposed, because being that it's a new conditional use, we should discuss what kind of conditions should we have. So, for example, I've heard things about the truck traffic. So should we have a condition where deliveries can only occur between certain hours of the day? I've heard things about the engineering. So should we have a condition where an engineering report needs to be completed before this would be for a production winery anywhere, an engineering report needs to be done. A water report needs to be done, things like that. Also conditions for landscaping or screening or things like that. So just a discussion on that probably.
I think you definitely have to limit the hours when the trucks can come, you know, during the day. At night, it's gonna be a problem with the parking. And it probably is a good idea to have the engineer look at the runoff problem and that too, before.
Engineering should look at runoff, they should look at traffic flow, they should look at
Parking.
pinch points, or are we gonna have to are we gonna have to invest more in utilities, you know, the basic stuff? How much more electricity goes in there? Are we gonna have to change the sewer system? Are we gonna have to, what else could you think of that they would have to look at? So you get,
Well, I would think the city
Curb and gutter.
engineers have a generic
idea.
checklist they can go through and answer a lot of these questions.
I think they can, yeah. It's an interesting building.
To have a meeting with the city engineers and the planning commission would be
Yeah.
a lovely idea.
Yep, so next month we can have our city engineer present at this meeting.
But it's good that we have a reason to have this discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's positive too, I think.
But you gotta look at, you know, parking, lighting, all
Yeah.
that stuff gotta be brought up, I think.
Yep.
And the precedents, I mean, precedents is something that shouldn't be overlooked.
Precedents? What do you mean?
Well, I know it looked like they had some information as far as the lighting goes.
Lighting?
Yeah. One of these I saw.
There's some info on lighting as well as referring back to ordinances and then also ground cover, trees. That's about it as far as what we have in front of us. Nothing really to the larger issues, which is traffic, water disbursement. There's a lot of hard surface up there now. It's not counting the old building, that's over 21,000 square feet.
What are you talking about, runoff control then?
Right.
Yeah.
All that
Yeah.
water that's coming down
Yeah,
off.
it's gotta
the-
go someplace, and it
Where's it
can't go in the river.
Need- Yeah,
They won't let us do that.
no.
Those days are gone.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Trump has kind of already said we can dump stuff in the rivers, so no. So as far as the conditions, were you hoping to get a generic condition that would cover any, like, potential businesses, or were you, I don't know, would it be better to handle it on a per?
Yeah, so they would
application.
have to be kind of generic. I can come up with some based on what I've heard tonight, and we'll bring it back to the next meeting. And that's when we can adjust it to, if you see a condition in there that you don't think should be in there, or if there's a condition that you think should be in there, we can vote and add or remove conditions before the city council approves the conditional use permit.
We
So,
pretty much all agree is we need to look at it as a conditional use permit. I think
Yes.
that's,
Closed
Yeah.
meeting.
yeah.
huh?
How was the existing winery done then? Because was that a conditional use then?
Non-complying, existing.
Yeah. It's in here somewhere, non-complying existing. I think that's right.
Well, I was just wondering how it was handled initially.
I'm not 100% sure on that.
Well, because they currently already do produce wine.
Yes.
In the one building, so I wasn't sure how that was arranged initially.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. Yeah. All
We're
I know
just-
is that we have to change it now for
We're
them
just-
to expand.
Looking for a bigger facility.
But I understand this correctly, they're gonna have restaurants and they're gonna have parties and they're gonna have other businesses in there. It's not just going to be a production facility.
The whole thing will be their production facility.
So they will not, Okay,
The addition is going to be the production facility, and then they will continue to do business
Production and what?
as usual, kind of where they have the music on some nights and they do host weddings and things like that. Right now, they don't have a 100% plan to have food in there at this point. It's a possibility, but they have to go through the state licensing program to get food to serve, obviously, so.
Then on these drawings, I was wondering, in that north elevation, the building in the far left, that's what's currently there, correct?
Correct.
So then everything else is the new,
Yep.
okay. And then from the back side, that would be what the existing door is, maybe?
No.
Just that white part on the far right is
Yeah,
what's existing.
right. Yep.
so the only thing you're looking for is a motion for recommendation
So-
on those two possibilities.
Yep, so right now where we are in the meeting is, I'm looking for a motion,
Yep,
probably based on what I'm hearing, a motion to recommend an ordinance text amendment to
Right.
section, somebody has to say all of that, and,
I can say that.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to recommend an ordinance text amendment to section 152.628, conditional uses in the zoning district.
I'll second that motion.
I've got a motion by Mr. Hema and a second by Mr. Daniels. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Actually, I think I was supposed to close that public hearing first, yeah. So we'll just
we'll
put that in
close
front,
at
yeah.
6:35.
There you go.
Perfectly fine.
And that brings us to
Yeah, it's
7B, Historic District Design Review.
Yes, so let me get up to the overhead here just to show for the viewers at home all of them. Okay, so the second part of our meeting is going to be a historic district review of the winery's preliminary plans. Like I mentioned earlier, these are preliminary plans. They have indicated that these are in no way 100% final. And tonight we're looking for planning commission member comments on the design and how it fits in with the rest of the historic downtown. So we've already had some comments on that, but this is the time to discuss that and any changes that planning commission recommends. We can either have them implement those and then we bring this back next month, or we can just send this off to the council and the council also discusses it, but we can either kind of table this item after we discuss it, or we can keep it moving forward. So without further ado, I do have here the preliminary plans from the Canyon River Winery for their proposed expansion. If you can kind of see that. The commissioners all have this and have looked at it, I'm sure. So we have on the left-hand side here is the existing winery. The red all the way going on to the left-hand side is the north elevation, which would also be what is on Mill Street. So you can see several windows. You can see a few trees, and then they're also going to have an outdoor seating area in the front, some signage, and then it appears a loading dock of some sort on the very far right. Let's see here. So this is the west elevation. This would be the side by the river and the Canyon Valley Trail. One set of windows, some shrubbery, and some signage again. And then on the bottom here, we have the south elevation, which would be towards the city parking lot back there and Highway 19. We see the existing building in white, some entrances and loading docks here on the very far right, and kind of the same system as we had out front, some windows, and some signage. Then we also received a preliminary inside indoor plan. Okay, I don't know how to work this thing, so I will just try to point out everything as best I can. We have an exterior patio with gates leading from the sidewalk right up here on the north side. This is Mill Street right up here. Then we have the existing winery wall, which is right on the right-hand side here. Some restrooms, some entrance into the existing area. And then in the expanded part here, we have warehousing and manufacturing of the wine. And then we have a few offices as well. Finally, they provided us with a rough detail of some landscaping, which we kind of saw in the preliminary elevations on the first picture. Some details about the shrubbery they plan to plant, and then some flower baskets on the patio, and some shrubbery and trees going along the west side by the river and the north side by Mill Street. So at this time, the commission can begin to discuss the plans, the preliminary plans, and their thoughts, comments, ideas, and we will go from there.
You want me to start?
And I can put these back up too.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that what we're being presented with this picture of an industrial building is kind of just a setup to see what we would like. If they are in fact going to just produce wine and that's it, but not have any retail facilities, but they're going to sell wine retail, they're going to maybe have shops, they're going to maybe have food, they already have parties and whatever going on there, then this it just doesn't have the look of a destination facility for those kinds of things, if that makes sense. It doesn't look welcoming. That's the simplest way I could say it. Like I said, put it in an industrial park, looks great, but it is not a welcoming looking facility. They don't have any, if they're going to have public entrances, they have to be on more than just one side. If they're going to have parties and stuff like this and have a staff of how many? How many?
I am not sure.
Yeah, they need staff parking. They need to look at bus parking. You can't put these buses on the public streets. They got to have facilities to handle the kinds of things that they're looking to bring in there. You can't depend on the staff to use. They have to have. I would think they'd have to have some kind of parking for their staff. At least.
Right now in the Central Business District, there are no parking requirements.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, otherwise they're in the city parking lot with staff.
Yep.
So then they're,
It has no entry to the main entrance.
Yeah, they don't have any entrance. Yeah, there should be an entrance from the city.
On the rear.
Well, if they're allowed
In
in the city parking lot, how are you going to get them from the parking lot to the front entrance of the building?
I was told by the owner of the winery that they do not plan on having an entrance at the rear for safety and public
Maybe
control
I'm missing
reasons.
the point of what they want to bring into the city here.
That is just the messenger.
I know. I'm just, yeah, if they're wanting to bring an industrial operation into the city. That's a whole lot different than what I think they're wanting to do.
There's no entrance from the parking lot into the winery.
There's no public, I mean, if they have, if they continue to have, if they have retail sites, if they have party facilities, if they have foods and shops, they need access.
Well, they do have party, I mean, upstairs in the.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I think that's part of the business.
Their parking is on the west side now, and the city parking lot, and taking a lot of that away.
Well, and I would think that, you know, in that lower part of the building where they currently have their production equipment, that production equipment probably be moving to this new building is my guess. My guess is that that would free up more space for them inside their building. For
A lot of these facilities make as a destination for people, they will have buses coming in on a regular basis. It's part of their business. I mean, they
tour the
tour buses will
winery.
stop by to tour the winery or whatever. So it's part of their business that they need to provide parking for those kinds of vehicles, or at least not take up the public parking space with a very specific, you know, multi-passenger vehicle. Interesting.
Well, my biggest problem with the winery from day one has been parking and parking for one, but and they're taking away that street. You see, I've been talking to the owner myself, trying to see if he'd put a road on the west end. And I even talked to the city EDA director this morning about if we could do it even on our city land where those shrubs are planted there or something. And then changing the outlet to the parking lot down by the kiosk to the trail. But this parking's going to be a problem. I've been working with the bank up there about selling their parking lot next to Nick's Diner, but it seems like everybody comes to this destination. They want to park right in the front, you know. And, they don't,
And you know, maybe then they should have a facility when they do have things that bring a lot of people in, then they should have parking service maybe.
drive a bus from,
No, I'm talking about pull your car in and somebody parks your car for you.
Valet.
Valet service. That might be that would be a partial solution. I'm sure it's something they'd love to do.
Well, it'd certainly give someone a job.
Oh, I know. I paid $7 for parking the other night in downtown St. Paul.
Well, that sounds like a steal.
That was just for valet to a specific business. That wasn't going into a parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
$7.
Yeah, I know. When I was in Minneapolis, I think it was more like 35 or something.
Yeah.
for
So I mean,
valet.
parking is a major
not cheap.
concern.
No, I think we need to have a little bit more information on the water runoff, because like I say, there's just in a new facility, it's 21,600 square feet of hard surface on that roof. Where's that water going? You know it's not supposed to go in the river, so you're going to need to have a plan. Also on the west side, what's the slope requirements for setback along the river? I'd like to address that. Also, where the utilities come in, placement.
How old are the utilities?
They're old. And then there's also questions, and I think the city would have questions about this, as to the water treatment, what's going to be necessary to treat the water that comes out of there. We all know that wine's got a high acid content. So is the city interested in that at all? I would think so. And also like to address the loss of the street. I mean, everybody and their neighbor knows where that road is and uses it all the time when they don't frequent John and mine's parking lot. Just address how are the people, if they're going to propose to use the parking for the city, how are you going to get those people to the front of the building? What's the path?
Yeah, there is none.
well, we saw what happened last weekend. I wasn't in town Saturday night, but Friday and Saturday night, they had more cars downtown than they knew what to do with, and they were parking on the bridge. So the police determined now that you can't park on the bridge, but I guess we're gonna have to change that, but there wasn't any, it was just,
They were parking on the bridge?
they were parking on the bridge anyhow, but they didn't
Yeah.
give them any tickets
Park on
last
the
week.
bridge Anywhere in Minnesota.
I mean, walking a few blocks is understandable, but, you know, it sounds like it was more than that. You couldn't even drive through hardly.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah, and especially if you get any snow, and you do see that in, you know, really, in, like downtown St. Paul was the same.
Well, that was a grand
A lot of places
opening,
are real tight with the snow.
and that was a grand opening too. I'm sure that they probably had all their friends and family come to help support them, as well as people that have been waiting for a year for the.
You have an industrial park
Burrito.
north of town?
We do have one. Got it, plenty of spaces, and guess who? I have to excuse myself.
well, if we
here.
could have the city engineer here at the next meeting, we could run
Yeah,
our
let's go.
concerns by him and where he's at.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Well, the other part is that that entire surface up there currently is impervious surface. So you're talking one impervious surface to another. I'm not saying that there won't have to be a plan for the collection, but, you know, may actually end up with an improvement.
Well, this is new construction, so you're gonna need to have a plan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, sir, can I ask permission to leave? I have a
Oh, yeah.
community choir practice I have to get to.
Well, you
You guys,
better get there.
but you guys are good to go. You got enough people. You gotta go. Sorry.
Yep, see you, Bruce.
So the Historic District Design Review. So far, most of what I've heard is that the feeling is it doesn't fit with the historic buildings down there. Is that what I'm kind of hearing, or I don't know. I mean, I can understand a lot of the comments and stuff about the side of the buildings and things, but you know, I've been downtown, and aside from a few where we've got some nice murals painted, this side of our buildings really aren't particularly spectacular.
Well, I think the front of the building looks nice and basically fits
Yeah.
in. It's the backside, which everybody on Main Street, which is also known as 19, and then it's a visual impact. There probably could be a few things there addressed to give it the brick, the old historic town look, rather than just the commercial block or precast, which it might be.
I agree. The Mill Street looks fine. You don't see too much to the west, but maybe addressing the south end, that makes an impact when you're coming to town to 19. That's where most of the traffic is coming from. Well, I don't think we have to make a motion on that, do we, or?
No, unless you want me to bring it back next month. To bring back some new designs from them, new design ideas for the back side of the building.
Yeah, that'd be a good
Okay,
idea.
so then I'll just take a motion to table the historic review until next meeting.
Yeah, I'll make that motion to table it.
I've got a motion by Mr. Altoff and a second by Mr. Lindell. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to number 8, which is Planning Commission member comments. Anybody have anything else?
I just came on Cannon Street up there, both Cannon Street and the next one up, where oh, well, it's up there
Church?
going by the, I don't know what church that is.
Dakota Street.
Yeah, is that Dakota Street? Both those two streets are really in horrible shape. I don't know if the city gonna do anything about it.
It's a north side project that's definitely in the plans, but the council voted to do the east side first.
Oh,
But I think that's next. And it isn't only those two streets, but it's also over there on, by the north of the industrial park.
Oh.
North of Cannon Equipment in that area. Varian Court and all those places. That's on the next plans too.
Yeah.
that's all I have.
Anybody else? That brings us to number 9, which is adjourn.
I so move.
Second?
I've got a motion by Mr. Lindell and a second by Mr. Daniels. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the Monday, March 12th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting.